Welcome to Wirtschaft TV. I am Manuel Koch, and joining me now is Lurie. He is professor at the Harvard University. He is a book author, and he brought his new book with us for us today. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Not at all. It's my pleasure.
We would like to talk about the politics here in the U.S., and everyone is talking about Donald Trump, of course. Some months ago, everyone was a little bit laughing, maybe. Now he is the candidate for the Republicans, most likely. Do you think he really could become the president of the United States?
Well, it's my bet. When you look at him, you're looking at the next president of the United States.
Why is that? What makes him special?
Well, what's made him special all along, really, the first thing that struck me was that he's a man of the media. He really understands the media. And Ronald Reagan was the last successful Republican who really understood the media, but Trump understands it much better. He's played that right along. The next thing about him is that he really is an example of what I call outside the nest function. Now, this is really the framework that I want to give you, and I'll try to give it to you in 1.5 minutes, if you like.
Sure.
But it's important that we all look at history through the eyes of a biologist, through biology, because we're biological creatures. And one of the reasons, anyway, that we keep repeating history is because we don't pay attention to the biology of it. So what's the biology of it? So the fundamental aspects of life, all life, is to survive and reproduce. Let's jump to humans. Humans reproduce in a nest. We're also a social species. So we bring up our very vulnerable baby in the nest. The woman is bound to the nest, at least traditionally. In the nest, the job is to keep it comfortable, clean, to nurture, and those are the main functions inside the nest. The other one is that all the offspring have to make it, because the fundamental of life is to pass the most genes on, this might get a little deep, but I'll leave it there, to the next generation.
But now it's 2016, right? And Hillary Clinton was already First Lady. Now she is maybe most likely the candidate for the Democrats. So should she stay at the White House and clean it, and Donald Trump should be the president?
Well, here's where Hillary shows these very fundamental phenomena. Hillary wants everyone to make it. Donald Trump functions outside the nest, traditionally the male's job, where the job is to bring resources into the nest for the family, for the offspring, and also to protect the nest against intruders. Now, if this doesn't start to ring a little bit about Donald Trump, that's where he is. He is protecting America against the intruders from Mexico and the Muslim intruders. This is what drives him, and these are the emotions that he's touching in the populace. He's touching emotions people don't realize need it. He's doing it intuitively. He's not listening to me. He's doing it intuitively. Hillary Clinton wants everyone to make it. Very typical for someone whose orientation, whose priorities are inside the nest.
So would Trump be more unpredictable then? Because you don't know what he is going to do?
Well, I think the thing we can bet on with Donald Trump, if we really understand the biology, is he will protect against intruders, and he addresses breadwinners, people who bring resources into the nest. He does it in subtle ways that no one has picked up on. And you have to realize that women, just like so many other species, go outside the nest once the young are old enough. And if you think about that, that tends to happen. So women and men are outside the nest bringing resources in. Trump talks to breadwinners when he says how much everything costs. He says how we're going to pay for everything. There's not a single politician I have heard in the last 35 years that ever gets into that. Sure, they talk about taxes and whatever, but they don't. Every time they have a specific policy, they just ignore the fact that it costs something. Breadwinners do not ignore that, whether they're male or female.
But what does that mean for Wall Street? Will Donald Trump, as a president, change the regulations?
Well, I think he'll change the tenor. He might bring in something like the Glass-Steagall Act to rein in the banks a bit. It's really an interesting phenomenon we have, because we have a Democrat who's in bed with the banks and a Republican who has stiffed the banks. I think that as he depends on contributions to his campaign, and as he depends more on others to help him, then he'll have to be more what we will call realistic and consider all aspects of the society.
Like all these gender details, issues we are talking about, do you think this will be more important in like upcoming elections?
Actually, I think it'll be less important because I think the issues will start to resolve themselves and won't be such a hot topic, certainly 8 years from now. I mean, look how far we've come. 8 years ago when Hillary Clinton ran for president, she had to portray herself as a man because a woman couldn't do that. She had slacks all the time. She had very short hair. Now, and over the last 8 years, she can be more feminine in her appearance because it's so accepted that women can function really equally to men in the current environment. The current environment does not depend on brawn, it depends on brain. Women are right there.
In Germany, we have a female chancellor, Angela Merkel. Do you see any parallels between Clinton and Merkel?
Well, it's interesting that Clinton, besides there being women, yes. Clinton and Merkel show two aspects of the in-the-nest behavior. So what Merkel did was to equalize everyone and have all the immigrants come in, no problem. Unfortunately, she resonated with a large proportion of the German population that wanted to protect the nest, and the nest, of course, becomes the country. Hillary Clinton is talking about what happens when the female leaves the nest to go into the outside world where survival is important. Still, for women, reproduction, their reproductive function is more important. Think of it. In the workplace, if there's a call to the father and the mother who are working, and it's a child who is sick, who's more upset? Who's more concerned? Who's more focused? The woman. It's very genetic. This is programmed into us. This is just how we are. This is what I mean by the biology of it all. And if we ignore the biology, we'll miss what's going on politically, and we'll miss much more.
In Germany, we just started to have like the CEO positions that there are like at least 20% of big companies are women. Do you think this is a good thing to do?
Is this by law, you mean?
Yeah.
No. I think that the secret of the success of Western civilization has been what we will call its plasticity. That is it allows for adaptation to the environment as the environment changes, and it's changing all the time. Certainly the economic and technological environments are changing all the time. And when you start to put in rigid rules, that's when you haven't paid much attention to biology.
Dr. Melvin Lurie, thank you so much for this really interesting view of the presidential candidates. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
A pleasure.